So I grew up during the boom of young adult dystopian fiction, an era of teenage rebels locked in violent games against oppressive regimes. Think The Hunger Games, Maze Runner, and Divergent. And I'm living through the boom of the lit RPG, where the hero's journey is reduced to a kind of dopamine loop of leveling up, getting new gear, and increasingly powerful items until you eventually fulfill your destiny and usually overthrow God. Some of my favorite books of all time fit into what I would call the smartest guy in the room trope, where you have these prodigies that think their way through impossible odds, that are cleverer than everyone else in the room by a mile, no matter what age they are. Think Ender's Game, The Martian, or even if you trace it back far enough, someone like Sherlock Holmes. Reading Red Rising for the first time, I was put in mind of all three of these things. You have the social ladder of YA dystopia, you have the power fantasy progression of lit RPG, and you have the kind of near messianic intellect of the main character. The question is, does Red Rising drown in these tropes, or does standing exactly at their intersection allow it to transcend them? Put another way, Red Rising by Piers Brown. Why do people like it? All right, so what is Red Rising? So, Red Rising was released in 2014. It was American author Piers Brown's debut novel, and after being rejected by more than 100 agents, we all love a story of mass rejection followed by mass success, it arrived to very strong reviews and a steadily growing cult of readers. Since then, it's sold over 6 million copies worldwide, spawned an expansive series, and it's sort of been on my radar for a while now. Usually these books that everyone likes, they sit there for a while and then more and more people recommend them until eventually it pushes me over the edge and I go, all right, let's dive into it. Let's see what it's all about. Okay, so we follow 16-year-old Darrow, who is a colonist and helium-3 miner in the depths of Mars. He believes he's part of this noble mission, terraforming the planet so that future generations from Earth can one day live there. But one day, following a sequence of traumatic events, he is pulled from his life in the mines and shown the truth. Mars has long been habitable, and his people are slaves to an elite ruling class that lives above them in pure luxury. So it's set in a society where your color is essentially your class or your rank, and Darrow is of the red class, which is the bottom of the barrel, and he finds himself through a series of events transforming and disguising himself as a gold so he can infiltrate their ranks and get his revenge, and then who knows what else. So that's kind of the premise of the story. That's not really spoiler. It's that's on the blurb. It happens in the first 100 pages of the book. The meat of the book is how does that go? Does he achieve what he sets out to? How does that battle go? And what are the relationships like as he infiltrates those ranks and tries to rise up to the top? Now, the YA comparisons are probably already jumping right out at you. We have a teenage protagonist, we have a color-coded hierarchy that flattens societal complexity in order for easy comprehension, and we have an evil regime that our protagonist is trying to overthrow that have mastered the art of keeping things exactly as they are. But as the story progresses, Brown starts to push at these boundaries a little bit, and he goes further than what YA typically allows. The brutality is pretty extreme. The societal commentary gets a bit more nuanced, especially toward the end. And it's also not as sexless as a lot of these books. I mean, there's nothing explicit in it, but sex or the desire for sex is certainly a part of the story. It's kind of treated as an indulgence that the character still can't afford yet, but it's definitely present. It's definitely part of what makes Darrow so complex. And so what starts as something that feels like it's going to be quite predictable unravels into something that is more interesting. Darrow isn't just fighting his oppressors, he's kind of starting to become them. And by the time the book ended, I really wasn't sure whether this was going to be a story of him overthrowing his oppressors and getting his revenge or becoming one of them. Is this the origin story of a conqueror? Like, it was pretty unclear to me, and that was quite exciting by the time I'd finished book one. So is it YA? Maybe a bit, but also not really. It kind of straddles the line, but pushes the boundaries at the same time. It's kind of what would happen if you took some of the genre's tropes, but removed its restraints. So another genre that I mentioned at the beginning was the lit RPG genre, and you might not even know what that is because it's pretty new. And even though the reader base is kind of huge, like not everyone is there yet. So what is it? I mean, I don't even know if I'm really the person to be explaining this to you, but for the purposes of this, I've written something down. Here's how I would define lit RPG. So I think lit RPG stories are stories where the mechanics of video games become the structure of the narrative. So characters level up, they unlock abilities, they acquire loot, and they track stats. And the genre lives on this kind of progression, giving you this steady hit of dopamine as the character levels up more and more and more and eventually becomes super powerful. Think of it as a kind of hero's journey narrative retooled for people who grew up on XP bars and skill trees. In Red Rising, you feel that same rhythm pulsing through the story as Darrow gains rank, influence, strength, new gear and abilities, and even without the literal stats element of lit RPG, the tests that Darrow has to overcome are structured and designed purposefully like a video game. As an aside, I read Dungeon Crawler Carl recently, which is probably the best example of this sort of genre, and it was fine, but I read it all in like less than 48 hours. I mean, do you know how many books I start and drop every year because it isn't immediately gripping me? And this one, which is like, honestly, the prose were average, the plot was average, the character was average, and I just ate it up. This genre feels a bit like a kind of cheat code, like it just almost hacks your brain, and you need to kind of know what is coming next. And that dopamine hit of like, oh, he's leveled up, he's got a new weapon, he's fighting a boss, just like a video game. It just gets into your head. The problem is, when I finished that book, even though I devoured it, there is a kind of hollow sense that rings out within you afterwards. It's like, yeah, all right, I read a book, but like, did I really achieve anything? Has it left anything behind? Probably not. Red Rising, though, borrows a lot of those same mechanics without falling into the same traps. So yeah, I had a very similar experience. I got caught in that just one more chapter loop that we all dream of when we pick up a book like this, especially when we get to the section of the book where Darrow enters the game and there's that competitive video game element. The difference was, when I got to the end, I felt like I was standing at the precipice of something with real weight and potential, and I was really excited to see where it could go, and I actually felt like this is an author who's got something to say. In terms of the writing itself, let me get this out of the way. Pierce Brown is a genuinely fantastic writer. He has that rare combination of readability and grandeur, almost George R. R. Martin levels of effortless flow. The prose feel big, they feel epic, without ever drifting into purple. My one criticism of the writing has got nothing to do with the prose itself, it's more about the structure of the book. Red Rising moves at a breakneck pace. Those early sections of the book where we're underground, we're in the caverns of Mars, we're in these societies, they feel rich and detailed and exciting. But when it's all said and done, we barely spend any time there. It kind of acts as more of a prologue. The next section of the book, where Darrow's kind of going through his transformation, also, like, it just lasts a couple of chapters. And then the game itself takes up the majority of the book. And even most of that feels like setup, and we're beginning, and we're getting into the flow. And it feels like, how are we going to wrap this up with a few chapters left to go? And then it just explodes. Everything goes crazy. We get taken to crazy new heights, and we wrap up and we put a bow on it, and then we're out. It is a frenetic pace that never lets up. I felt like there was an entire book to be had just from that opening prologue. Like, I wanted to know more about the systems down there, more about the people down there. I feel like that could have been a whole book, and the conspiracy, like, that could have been a whole book in and of itself. And a great ending for that book would have been Darrow finally being taken up and shown the city above them for the first time, and feeling the weight of that. And then we go into the second book, exploring what that's about. Now, the cynical part of me thinks that this is another way that Brown engages with the modern reader's perceived lack of attention span. So, like the comfort of the YA novels that came before it, or the addictive progression loops of the lit RPG, this is another way to ensure that the readers never have to concentrate on anything too hard for very long, and we're always moving on to the next thing, so that, like, we don't get bored and we, like, keep people's attention. A more generous reading might be that the pace of the book gives it a kind of cinematic quality, it sort of plays out like a Hollywood blockbuster. Or we could say that this restless way the narrative unfolds mirrors Darrow's psychology and his impatience to ascend. Or we could just say that those early beats were not really the story that Brown was interested in telling. I mean, I don't know where the next book or the third book or the fourth book is going to go. Like, I don't really know, even after finishing this one, what the core of this story is. So, maybe it's just something that didn't interest him. Either way, I do feel like the pacing hurts the book a little bit, and I can't help but mourn that loss of potential, especially considering Brown's gifts as a writer. I think some of those early emotional beats are a little bit flattened as a result of the pacing, and there's just this strong sense that we're never really in a place long enough to fully understand it and feel it before we're just kind of moved straight on to the next thing. When all is said and done, though, it would be churlish to call this book anything other than brilliant, and it is only because of the book's quality that I mourn the loss of some of the depth that we could have had if Brown had chosen to tackle it in a different, perhaps more patient way. Okay, so let's answer that question we posed at the start of this video. Why do people like Red Rising? Well, they like it because it takes familiar frameworks and it pushes against their boundaries, creating something sharp and emotionally charged. It's relentlessly paced, it's mythic in tone, and is written with a clarity that makes the world instantly vivid. Even though the book sometimes does trade depth for momentum, that momentum means that the book is always completely gripping. And by the time that it ends, you are left not knowing where it's going to go next, but being completely thrilled by the scale of its possibilities. Okay, so that is Red Rising by Pierce Brown. As you can tell, look, no secret there by the end of this video. I absolutely loved it. If by some miracle you haven't read it yet, I'll leave an affiliate link in the comments below so you can go and pick up a copy. I'd honestly 100% recommend it. If you have read it, let me know in the comments. What did you think? Do you agree with some of my points here? Do you have a different take? I'd love to know. But, very serious, do not spoil the rest of the series for me because I'm excited about it and I'm going to read it and I'll be very, very mad if you do. But other than that, thanks for joining me. Like and subscribe if you like the video, and I will see you in the next one.